Welcome to the Everyday Magic Podcast.
I'm Dr. Sophia Trevenna.
And I'm Aine Rock. We've been best friends for 25 years, living very different lives, and always connected by the belief that no matter what life throws at you, we can always find the magic.
And today we're going to be exploring that by really taking you on the journey of the last year when we were guided together, following intuition and listening to our spirit guides and angels. We were guided to form a company together, shoulder to shoulder, 50-50 partnership. And we have been on this journey of trying to find the everyday magic in making a legal contract to make that so, looking at manufacturing products, doing marketing, and all the things that are involved in a business, but doing it with intuition, with higher guidance, and as best friends.
Yes, it has been a journey, and it's been a beautiful one.
Really beautiful. That's our other motto. You know, life isn't always easy, but it can be beautiful when we're together.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and we've been doing it. So let's go back to the day that we were sitting by the pool and we had guidance and intuition that we were to become 50-50 partners to bring a company to the world that brought products that I had been getting guided into to support the sensitive, intuitive nervous system. And we'll talk about the products another time. It's more about our journey of the company at this point. But we knew, and we both believed in these products because we'd been using them for ourselves, for sleep and for getting into the other side of challenges we were having and all sorts of good things. So we knew we liked the products. And we knew that a lot of people would benefit from them, but we never knew that we were going to go shoulder to shoulder to bring them to the world. Mm-hmm. And I just want to talk about what happened to me that very night. So that night I go to sleep pretty blissed out. And I was like, I don't have to do this alone. I don't have to build a company at 50 years old and begin by myself. And I've always respected your business savvy. You've been one of my best coaches when I've had major business decisions to make, including exiting a company. And I got 3 times the amount from that exit because you were helping me along. So I trust you in business in every single way. So I went to sleep going, wow, I get to do it with not only my best friend, but also someone I respect so much in business that I know can do this. It also has a wellness background. It was just like a dream come true. I'm so blissed out. I go to sleep. And I wake up in the middle of the night, and maybe anyone watching this can resonate. You're like, oh, this is so good. And I wake up in the middle of the night with a panic attack, remembering when I was a mechanical engineer working in manufacturing, and I would get a page in the middle of the night, the manufacturing line's gone down. The thing you're trying to make, they don't have the part or the component or the ingredient, and it's your fault. And you need to do something about it right now. And I all of a sudden felt like there was handcuffs on me, chaining me to a future where I had to be connected at the hip with every single piece of product in the world. And I basically had a heart attack about it. And I remember I got down on my hands and knees on my bed. I don't know if anyone's ever done this, whatever way you beg for help and you give, cry for mercy. I got on my hands and knees, put my forehead on my hands and said, please don't make this my future. Like, please don't have me come into a world at the age of 50 where I have to be chained to the manufacturing process. I do not want to do this. And I told you about this and you were just like, yeah, that's not going to happen. Like you were like, there's no way that this is what we're being guided into. You're not being guided into prison. So then the next day or within a few days, I'm sitting by in the swimming pool at a hotel. And there's half the chairs are open and half of them are taken. I take a chair, I'm reading my physics book as I do. And this man walks in and walks the whole circle around the swimming pool and sits next to me. And we start talking, and it turns out he lives in Toronto, and I'm from Toronto. We talk all about physics. We have all this long conversation. And I say, what do you do? And he says, I bring beauty lines to market and wellness lines to market. And I said, what? Tell me more. And he said, I've worked on all the big brands. I've also small brands. I know a winner when I see it, and I work with them to find the best manufacturer, make the products, and make sure that the whole supply chain is taken care of. And I'm like, so if something went down in the middle of the night, who would get called, you or them? And he said, me. And I was like, okay, we need to talk. And he became our manufacturing coordinator. And I've never had that worry again. So that's an incredible example about how the field, the flow of life, the things just happening for you, working with what people call manifesting, but I feel more it's like creating. When your intention is clear and it's in the direction your soul is meant to go, it's like the whole universe conspires to bring you the next step. So that was my experience of us right after we made this commitment.
Yeah.
And I've never asked you this. I was pretty consumed with my obsession at that moment. But what happened with you?
Gosh, I just remember, I mean, it was all woven into this time of us co-creating by the pool and just feeling this excitement and expansion. And I really had a feeling of like, I get to do this. I get to be part of it. You know, I've watched you and your genius for years and have such respect for everything you've done professionally, had been, you know, right at your side hearing about the creation. And it just felt like a total yes, right? It felt like, oh yes, this is how we go forward. We lock arms. We both go together on this journey. Like it's so much more fun on the journey with somebody else. And I've been a solopreneur, right? I've been an entrepreneur and a solopreneur for so long and also married, right? So I'll say like immediately yes. And then a kind of like, oh, this is, you know, business married. And the stuff came up about like, what does this mean, right? Am I making the right move? Does this marriage went terribly? Will this go terribly? What if it does? And it actually led us to some beautiful conversations about how we wanted to hold this and how we want to go in with eyes wide open and bring the wisdom and the learned lessons of other experiences to bring forward the best possible version of coming together. And it just felt like, I still feel that. I still feel like I just get to do this and we get to uncover the next thing and the next thing. And it is truly living with trust. And I feel always called to my highest self when we work together, that we do that for each other. We really call each other into the highest version of ourselves.
Yes, I agree with this. And I remember that day that we tried on not doing it, it both felt so collapsed and small. And that collapsed and small feeling versus how do we take products I was making by hand and turn it into scaled manufacturing? Like there's so many what if, like how do we create an investment model that actually works with intuition where investors trust us using intuition to make some choices we can't rationally explain. There was a whole bunch of things that most people just be like, that's crazy. I'm not doing that. But we couldn't turn away from that knowing that if we didn't do it, we would feel that collapsed small feeling. And when we felt into doing it, there was bigness there was expansion. So I remember feeling like we never hesitated that we were going to do it. I don't remember after we made the choice I don't remember any time, no matter how hard it got, us ever saying, we shouldn't be doing this. We made a mistake. That's never happened. And we've had big challenges, like right away, getting into making the, legal agreement of what the partnership looked like. We had lawyers pit us against each other and say, well, she could do this and she could do that. And it's interesting because everything they were saying, people had done to me. I've seen best friends that have been together for 40 years make a business and they've had real estate and everything's been fine, but this business is the one that breaks their friendship. And I remember the day we both looked at each other and cried and was like, I don't want to lose the friendship. Like that was our only fear. Wasn't that we're going to lose money or that we're not going to be successful or that this was a big, stupid idea. It was like, what if we end up not being friends in some way?
Right. Yeah. And we really, because of that, went back and things really, I think one thing about us is when things get crunchy, we both are willing to stay.
Word.
We are willing to be in the discomfort, willing to be like, oh, this feels awful. Or you said to me, it's felt really bad when the lawyers bring up the what if she does this, what if she does that, because it puts it into the field that like I could do that. And it just, we both kind of went like, yeah, it really does
really
feel gross.
And then we embraced it. And then we said, why don't we just call it and we actually used the name of a woman I had known and been in partnership with in business who had really, really turned on me. And I called it her name factor. I'll just say X factor. And I'd say, there is an X factor where someone can just become a different person. I don't believe we're going to do that. I didn't know her as long. We didn't go but let's just play out the scenarios that what if that X factor happened and all of a sudden you didn't like me, you didn't understand me, etc. And I think everyone's had one person. I mean, I would hope everyone's watching this has been like, there's someone I thought was my friend that turned out to not really get me. And
I think we go into so many agreements in life with, the hope and the trust, and we kind of buy into the excitement.
Yeah.
And I know I do that. And I think that's the beauty, the optimism of life.
And when we were in our 20s, that's one thing. When now we're close to like near our 50s.
We took the wisdom of what we've learned, right? We took the wisdom. I'll just use marriage as an example. Like, we didn't have a prenup. Why would we need that?
We're in love. It's going to be perfect. We're going to be together forever.
We're divorced. And, just call it naivety or call it,
good spiritness, beautiful intentions.
But to also ask the hard questions
and
say, what if, okay, now we have all the what ifs on the table. What if we don't want to do this? What if you don't want to be the CEO, but you do want to keep your economic interest? What if this and what if that? And what
if you want to move to India? What if you get sick or you're in a coma?
Right.
We went through the whole what if, including what if one of us just goes crazy? What if? And the beautiful thing about this, and I used to do this with my teams, is I would say, let's look at the worst that can happen and have our prepared plan so that that's all taken care of. We shelf it. If we ever have to pull it off the shelf, great. But now we don't have to think about it. It doesn't have to be playing in the background. Right. And I feel like this is where we're seasoned women. These are what decades of living have taught us, is that anything is possible. And if you're prepared for it, it actually takes it out of your nervous system, out of the flow of the energy field of the creation. And so I'm a big fan of prenups forevermore, because then you never have to worry about it. And if things get crunchy, you're not staying in the relationship so it doesn't become that gross thing, because you've already addressed that gross thing. It's already got it in the agreements. You know what you'll do if it happens. So it actually takes it off the table and allows you to really play the game.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we did that.
We navigated that really beautifully.
I know that we did, because I've done it with many other business partners, and no one could stay at the table through the difficult conversations we had. And every time we talk to other people about it, they're blown away that we did it and what we came up with. We came up with some real gems.
And I think it's worth addressing or just pointing out too that as women, right, it's not just two business partners, two people who went into business and created a 50-50 prenup, but two women, both successful, both at the height of our life and business. And we never use that as any kind of competition. We're
Never.
really able to sit with the medicine that comes up, right? If it's something boy, that really brought something up in me, that's the staying at the table piece. That's the I'm willing to stay there and I'm not breaking away and pointing a finger. It's I brought it up. It's for me to do. And I know we still choose each other.
I would say that one of the big things that comes up and brings up something in me all the time is that you have a much more refined, polished way of doing things. And I had to do things with very low budget, gritty, academic, nonprofit, community service level. So I've been trained to make a lot out of nothing. And so you have been trained to have a very polished, refined presentation of things in marketing, et cetera. And so at times I want to move forward and do the scrappy thing because that's all it needs and I'll get it done. And that's where the success happened for me. And I sometimes feel like the gas and you'll feel like the brake to me. And when it comes up in me, I think a lot of things I've experienced with other people is that they would be like, you're stifling me. You're limiting me. You're not listening to me. This is how it works. And I've had people do that with me. And all I do is I get clear and I go, okay, I got to stop and check in. Is this a growth edge for me? Or is this something I need to go, no, we can move forward. And when I stop and tune in and I feel into each option, because there's two options on the table, and I'll be like, what if we did it the way that I feel it could be done? And I just feel the shrinking. And I'm like, what if I do it the way Anya's saying, which feels like it's so much money and time, and does it even matter that it's that good? And I feel the expansion. I'm like, it's true. And so I don't know that a lot of people, let alone women, can take that time and go, this is bringing it up in me, but it's mine to look at. And I have to get very neutral and decide what the truth is, not to make it a she's right and I'm wrong or vice versa. No power over. It's always the medicine. And your difference that it brings up in me is medicine for me to go in and learn something and for a transformation. That's like one specific example.
Yeah. Beautiful.
And then I grow. Yeah.
We grow together.
Yep, we do. And one of the reasons I didn't want to be business married is because I'll use the example of the co-working space I owned in Hawaii. I knew that the location for it to grow and triple its size, which it was ready to do, was at this very specific location. My intuition knew it, and it wasn't on the market. And I said, let's close our business and wait till it's on the market. And everyone said, that's crazy. You don't know it's going to go on the market. You don't know how much. So my intuition had no factual,
no rationalization,
no rational backup. And yet I couldn't go against it because I can't go against myself, because I go into that collapse place and I physically literally get sick and tired and depleted. So I couldn't. So I actually had to leave the company, and I had to sell my shares to my team, which you helped me do. You were coaching me through that. 2 years later, that exact location came on the market at about a sixth of the price of other locations. They moved in there. They're still making bank from that choice that I was advocating for in the beginning. And it took time, and I didn't profit from it because I ended up leaving. And I said, I'm never having business partners again, because when I have a partner, I can't make intuitive choices, and they need me to back it up, and I don't have that. And I worked with so many couples in different countries. That's just making me almost want to cry, where I've been told by strong, powerful, especially women, sometimes men, that they're not allowed to use intuition, because if it goes well, everyone's like, okay, that was a fluke. And if it goes badly, they're very much blamed. And so they'd rather just shut it down. It's better to have the project fail than to say an intuitive hit had, and take the liability that if it doesn't work, then you're just that quack. And if you are someone that can stand for your intuition and say, I have a gut feeling about this, and push and make it happen a lot, then you're the ones that people see as like strong business leaders that just have a gut knowing. You have to listen to them, but they're usually dictators. So it's like this really impossible dance of merging intuition into leadership. So the only way I knew to do it was to do it alone next time and never have a partner. So that when we're guided into 50-50, I have to face that.
Right. And I think it was helpful. I mean, I knew that story. I knew that was a big hesitation, right? And so much we talked about in the first episode was like the desire to know each other, right? And that's so much a part of our friendship. And I knew that going in. And I really do trust your intuition and mine. And I know, I'm like, well, it might be crazy, but
let's go on this ride.
Let's do it. What else would I be doing?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think it's a blend of that, of like knowing, right? And being willing willing to say yes. And I think that does make our partnership unique. And
yes.
And I know that you come to me for the things that you don't know.
Yes.
That I do put a lot of trust into your intuition because I've watched you hone it as a scientist. I've watched your life, and I know you bring your intellect to your intuition. I think that's also really important. And I know you come to me for the things that I know to be true. So that's why we always talk about Sofanya being a signature of both threads of us, right? It has so much of each of our energy.
And both of our intuition. I think if we get really refined in how we use this, with every choice we have, we really close our eyes and feel into our body about what it would feel like to do A or B or C. And then we'll even ask, show us the benefit. Once we have a choice we want to go with, show us the benefit. And we'll see, I see us actually making more money from this, or I see us making contacts but not making money. Or should we go to this conference? I'll be like, I see us meeting 3 important women that really have insights for our business plan. And then we'll go and we'll have that experience. So we actually can feel into the future field that we're looking at experiencing and get nuanced information about how to approach it and how to prepare for it. And when you have 2 people doing that and comparing notes, and those notes are mostly similar, that's another layer of trust that we can cultivate with more than just one person. That's a huge benefit. And then knowing that you were by my side while I was making that business choice to leave based on them not getting my intuition, and then saying, I want to do business with you. It's not like you just kind of watched me from a distance. You were like my confidant, my coach, watching me. So you really intimately knew how I worked. And there was still the risk that it still might come to a point where we totally disagreed. And that was one of the biggest things we had to face is what if your intuition says yes and mine says no? Probably more likely the other way around, but one of mine's the gas and you're the brake, and we can't get past it. And we were like, there could be that chance. So we're like, let's have a council of 3 women that we really respect that we would go to and say who is right. And if that was a deal breaker for us, if, I feel like we should fire this person and you feel like we should hire them and it's a deal breaker if we don't, then we even said, if the council we go to says Anya's right, and the company is not big enough for the 2 of you anymore, then I would step down from the company. My salary would go to a replacement, and I would keep my economic interests. We even thought that through. And so we had a plan. And the very first investor we talked to after that, she said, what's going to happen if you guys disagree? And we told her that plan. And she said, I've worked with so many companies that have never thought through or come up with something like this, where you could actually keep your interest. So you still get, profits, but you're not part of the decision making. So you don't lose everything. She's like, it's such a creative idea. You guys could do a class or a program just in this feminine model of really considering not just the economic side of choices, but what the values mean.
Yeah, it's different. I think it's maybe sometimes I'm so immersed in it, I forget how different it is too.
Right.
And unlike you, I was never, I wasn't, well, you were never really in the corporate world, but
I did for a few years when I was working in tech as a mechanical engineer. But for a few years, all my clients were corporations too, is also like the Department of Defense, the Department of Energy, Department of Education. They were my clients, and I would have to tell them, I wouldn't not have to tell them, but I would show them the things I came up with. And they were like, where did you come up with this? And I didn't want to say, well, I went to sleep. I asked, I had a dream. I wrote it down when I woke up. I couldn't say all of that, but that's what was happening. And they were like, this is so innovative, this idea of teaching kids to energy audit their schools and having them use the profits to, purchase more sustainability technology for their school, like a windmill. And they would implement these programs, and they were just like, this is such a good idea, but I really had it in a dream. And I can come to you and say, I had a dream last night that at the podcast,
that's always the key. I'm like, ooh. What's the dream? We know there's information. There's gold in the dream.
Yeah, and you had a dream recently. You said you were driving.
Yep.
What was that dream? That was good. You were like, you were driving.
You were driving the car, and I was in the passenger seat. And there was we were going around a corner really fast. We were in kind of a strange place, and I was like, do you know where we are, where we're going?
And then I tuned in and said, Angels, what does Anya need to learn about her dream? And it was that you really, and at times, have to be a passenger to the next step, because the angels are talking through me, and that you need to feel into how you feel being a passenger, not having control of the wheel, but also not having any landscape to look at. And I said, how did you feel in the dream? And you said, when I tuned into feeling how I felt relaxed and comfortable. I actually felt fine.
Yeah, I don't remember feeling afraid.
Yeah. And I was like, maybe it's just to recognize that your body knows, even though you don't have your hands on the wheel all the time, and that there's no visible landscape telling you. Your rational mind doesn't have any information. But your body knows, I'm safe here. This is okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and tuning into my dreams has been a practice, right, that you've helped me hone, of understanding how we access our intuition through our dreams, where we spend so much of our time.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say the things, if I were to take a leap on this, I would say the things that jar me, that could be triggering for me or hard for me, is when things need to be more polished than I think they need to be. And I would say maybe what I've noticed for you is if it can feel like a hairpin turn when I come with an intuitive knowing that seems out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we actually do both. Like often you're right in that way because you've honed that more than I have. And often I'm right in the intuitive way because I've honed that more than you have. But we both wait till we get to a yes together. And the angels told us one day, do you remember, what I'm going to say? So go ahead and you say.
Well, the angels came and said, if you don't agree on something, it's because you don't have enough information yet.
They were like, you actually are tapped into the same source. As I say at the top of my website, we all have 8 billion doors to the same room. We're both accessing the same universal higher truth that knows the most optimal path, next step for us. So if we see it differently, it's because we haven't actually tapped into that higher source that actually is the same answer and figured out what we need to let go of or let in to see it and accept it and activate it. And I've found that true for the whole year. Like when we're opposite, if we sit with it, you'll be like, launching the podcast on Valentine's Day feels intense. And I'm like, it does feel intense, but is that collapsing or bad? And you're like, no, actually, it doesn't feel intense bad. And I'll be like, it feels intense, like we have some growth to do, but worthy. And then we're like, let's do it. So it can seem opposite, but when we talk about it more and let intuition come in and how we feel, and always looking for what feels expansive versus collapsed. Because it could feel hard or crunchy or difficult or stressful, but it's still an expansive part. It's like it's like the nervousness I got before I got on stage and I was supposed to be doing keynotes all the time.
Right. Well, and when are you supposed to, it's like we came up with a million challenges to get here today to do this, right? And yet when we felt in, we were like, are we really supposed to do this?
Okay, so like, let's name a few of these things today. The first day that we're like, we're filming this podcast. I mean, it's the rainiest day in LA in probably a year. Our makeup person driving 10 minutes to get to me, it took a half an hour to get through the traffic.
Took me 2 hours.
It took you 2 hours. We both felt physically horrible when we woke up, more than we ever have usually. What else happened?
I was supposed to drop the dogs off and literally at the daycare, and they were like, oh, their vaccines expired yesterday.
So you have nowhere to bring the dogs while you're here all day?
Okay. Yeah.
Like, oh, there's a bandsaw going in next door. They decided to build something on the other side of this wall.
Yeah. And so we asked, are we supposed to do this today?
Yeah. Is this all happening to stop us?
Right.
And like, we're not supposed to do this right now. We're not ready or something. And when we both tuned in and got calm and still, what I felt was, this is bringing us into our deeper selves. So we're not just showing up as if it's like the thing we do after coffee. It's like we really had to, like, as we face each thing and decide to keep going, as you get in the car and can't drop off the dogs and you have a 2-hour drive ahead of you with a bandsaw waiting on the other side.
I mean, I could have brought the dogs. That would have been fun.
Different podcast.
Yeah.
But because of all of those depths that we faced, we got deeper and deeper. So we're talking from a deeper place is what I saw. I saw us talking from a deeper place because we faced these little challenges to get there.
Yeah. And that it is being authentically true to the energy of what it took to show up here, right? Because that is what the longevity is. It's like there are going to be bright, beautiful days where it's fun and easy, and there's going to be days that challenge us. And I mean, I was driving 2-hour wall-to-wall traffic, but I was still like, no, we're going to play and it's important.
And while you were driving, I was talking to you while I was getting my makeup done. And I was like, do we have to like write some sort of trailer or something, introduction? And we talked about it the whole drive, and you were driving slow enough that you could type it while I was getting my eyeshadow on.
She's like, how are you taking notes? I'm like, I'm going 6 miles an hour.
And our makeup artist, our lovely Teresa, she was like, drive carefully. Don't get an accident just to get this thing. I'm recording.
I stopped once we went fast.
Yeah. But like, even that worked out. And then the whole time I had my eyes closed getting eyeshadow and you're driving slow, we got our introduction and it felt so us. It felt so good. And it was a beautiful outcome. So it's interesting. We've learned that there's times when it's really hard and crunchy. It's time to like dig deep. It's a dig deep invitation, right? Do you really want this? Are you going to do what you have to do to rise to the occasion? Then there's the other thing that we call the art of the pivot.
Yes, knowing when to pivot.
Knowing when to be like, we're not supposed to do this, abort everything.
Yeah. And how to do it with grace.
And how to know the difference. Like the younger versions of us would be like, I would tell you, I'd be like, I'd get to Portugal and I'm like, my flight canceled. Someone gave me a free place to stay. I was going to fly off, but I'm here sitting in the rain with nothing to do. And you're like, just stay there. Something will happen. Right? And then there's other times when I'll call you saying the exact same words and you're like, you should probably get out of there. How do we know when it's time to dig deep and find your way to it, or it's the art of the pivot, it's time to pivot and go in another direction?
Yeah.
And I think we have learned what's the expansive feeling versus what's the collapsed feeling.
As with all intuition, this is the experiment. This is the trial and error. Sometimes I know I've had flights cancel. I'm supposed to be somewhere and I'm like, no, I am going to get there come hell or high water, right? I'm meant to be there. I know I'm supposed to be there. And other times where I'm like, okay, this is just redirecting me. Wasn't for today.
Yes.
And I think there's an element too of the trust of just like, life isn't like we don't have the map ahead of time. We have to just be on this experiment and listen and learn and know our own personal cues.
Right. And this is another pillar of the company, which is planning and emergence.
Mm-hmm.
The planning is the masculine, the emergence is the feminine. We need both.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to plan to do this, and then we're going to be in tune with what's emerging so that we're really in the dance of both. And I remember when we came up with the art of the pivot, I was house sitting for you when you were married and your kids were younger. And you, because the four of you were going to Costa Rica for a family vacation, and I get a phone call from you saying we got to the border and your husband and one of your children couldn't go, and you and your other child could go. They were splitting the family in half. Never happened before.
What a story.
And that's when the words came out of my mouth. I said, this is the art of the pivot. And it's the first time I ever said those words, but we both knew exactly what we were talking about. And I said, what if it's really cool that you get to have a vacation with your one child, and your partner gets to have a vacation with the other child, and you get that bonding. And instead of him coming home with them, he went to a hotel and had a different vacation. And everyone came back so bonded in a different way. And I think that serves you in divorce, knowing you can bond with your parent not together. I think that was almost, I just thought of that maybe.
Oh, I thought of it then.
Yeah, you thought of it then?
Yep.
No way.
Yes.
No way. Wow, you had a glimmer.
Yes.
I call a glimmer a piece of the future showing itself to you.
Yeah, I remember being like, I'm not super disappointed that he's not here. It's a little glimmer.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
And yeah, even without it being a conversation of divorce, it was like, it is good that each one of you is bonding with that child.
You're right. Just to know that that's possible. It doesn't have to be four all the time. It doesn't have to be them together all the time. So there's something that beautiful that emerged that was beyond what you know. And this is where the rational can't get you that answer, right? Where there's a feeling that I'm supposed to dig deep into this or I'm supposed to pivot.
Well, and in that case, we literally there was no choice.
Okay. And so that's happened in Sofanya too.
Yep.
So we started off with the name Beautiful. BE dot
dash. It was like, the joke was like, we have Morse code. BE dot U dot
to full. So you could be you and be beautiful. And so anyways, you were like,
the DNA of our company
was this. And we paid for it, for the trademark. We paid for branding. We were well down the path. We had chosen of all the options.
We had a website.
We had a website,
we bought the domain
for thousands of dollars.
Yes, I mean, we negotiated for the domain.
Oh, we worked hard for it.
Yeah. When we say we were well down that path,
we were well down that path. Yes, we were invested. And then we found out that we couldn't legally use that name. And I remember being in Joshua Tree and calling you, and I'm like,
I was in Arrowhead with my kids.
So we were both kind of sort of, supposed to be on vacation. And I call and I say, we have to change our company name. And I remember your face going, ooh, I wonder what this is about. I wonder where this is taking us. And I was like, I love her. I love her. Thank you for sending me her. She's the best. And I'm like, I wonder, this could be happening for us, not to us.
Right.
And I was like, can we get neutral? Because first you have to get energetically neutral, meaning not preferring any outcome, not attached to one outcome or another. You're a blank slate, wanting to know the truth. And once you know that you're neutral, you can say, show me the best name for our company. And we're now willing to know it's not beautiful. As in BE dot U. And you were like, I'm glad I never have to say that again. The Morse code of our name. So I remember us closing our eyes, and you were the first to speak. Do you remember what you said?
Yeah. And I said, I feel like it's a name that means something. You know how your license plate, you have a license plate personalized with a name that has a lot of meaning to you. And I just said, I feel like it's a name or something that means something to us, but isn't in the trademark. So no one's ever seen it before. It's something completely unique.
Right. And I then got an intuitive flash of us being at the gym. And like months before, we had been at the gym, and I went to say, oh, Sophia and Aine need to, eat some food. We're getting hungry. And I was like, Sofanya needs to eat some food. And I'd slurred our names together and you're like, we're Sofanya now. And I was like, yeah, we share a brain. And so we would be like, everything's coming up Sofanya when we're having a good day. So the name Sofanya came before the company. And when you said that, I flashed to the gym in that day and I was like, what about Sofanya?
Yeah.
And we just lit up.
We both knew pretty quickly. And then we came to like, but how do we spell it and what do we do? And I think it's really interesting and beautiful that the spelling of Sofanya is not actually how either of us spell our names, but it's the sound of both of our names.
It's the vibration.
It's the vibration of both of our names.
Sure. That's interesting. I actually have never thought about that. And we've known that what we're bringing to the world is a frequency. Our first investor said, I've invested in you because you're bringing a frequency that I also stand for. And I know that everything you speak, everything you do is going to bring that frequency to the hearts and minds of people that I care to be touched in the way that you touch me. And so I'm curious, like, if we talk about that, what do you think that frequency is?
The frequency of love.
Oh, yeah.
Of course.
It's written on every single bottle, infused with the frequency of love.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it is, every time we try to make it more complicated, the mechanical engineer physicist in me, I'm like, but I have studied frequency and it's so complex. But really, it really is. There's this perfect feeling of love that kind of is always the simple answer to everything.
And I know as we've gone through this, that everything we did in creating the company with B.U seeded it with everything we needed, right? Because Be You was about be authentically who you are.
Yes.
We see the beauty in you.
Yes.
It allowed us to go on a different journey.
That we would have never gone on otherwise. Even coming up with the journey isn't always easy, but it can be beautiful. That came when we were when we were in the world of beautiful. Like that, I won't do it again. I'll never do it again. Once this is over, you never have to speak the word again.
Try getting websites that can't have dots, but then they need dashes, and we're like, B
like,
dash?
To get the LLC, we can't use dashes with the IRS.
Too many dots and dashes. We're Sofanya.
It's so much easier. And then I remember I was like, but we need to say some sort of tagline. And I always make it complicated. You always make it simple. It's always the case. I give a dissertation and you give a headline. And I was like, but it's like, I went through all this, like all these products, like they're not just skincare. I want people to know it goes like to the living layer of the skincare, but it's like, it really takes care of you and it makes you so good and well. But then there's also like beauty as part of it. But then we have so much to share from our lives. And you were like, beauty, wellness, and wisdom. I was like, yeah. Yeah. It's always me pontificating. And you're going, we'll just do this.
Right.
Like, but what about the frequency? And you're like, it's just the frequency of love. And I'm like,
right.
It is. So all these pieces have been, I always say, like a cloud distilled into a shot glass.
And we couldn't get to the headline if we didn't have the dissertation.
Thanks for saying that, goddess.
It's really true.
Some of us went to school for 18 years after high school, only to say, we just need the frequency of love.
Yeah.
Some of us take longer journeys to get there.
Some of us stayed married for 15 years, only to get to the point. It's like we all are on our journey.
Here we are, both single for the first time in our 20s together. Yeah.
We all have a journey. I think that's so important to remember. We both really hold each other in that. When you're on the journey, be on the journey.
Yeah.
And it's okay, right? And we've been on the journey in Sofanya. We can look back and say like, oh, we had to do it that way. It had to come this way.
Yeah.
When things don't feel like they're moving fast enough, we're like, we trust. We trust that this is the exact timing that it's meant to be.
Right.
We have the space to do this podcast. We have everything we need for this step, which we know will emerge something new.
Yeah. We always just show up and the next piece emerges for sure. And then there's times when planning really does come in. Like when I was on that airplane and the man beside me pulled out a magazine of the pitch deck of the company he just invested in, and I showed up at your hotel and you would just come home from a sound bath and sound healing in a beautiful cave. You're going to sleep. And I was like, no, we have to make this magazine. It's alive in me. I feel it. You stayed up till 3. I stayed up till 5, and we had the magazine, and we pitched an investor the next day who loved it. And so it's like there's times when it's like, oh, this is not intuition anymore. We need to make something. There's like a hardcore 3D thing that has to happen. So I feel
that's it. The merging of the 3D and the 5D. We're bringing all the pieces together, right? And it's so beautiful.
Yeah. I feel like the next thing.
No dots and dashes.
No dots and dashes. No Morse code. Very direct. I feel, and I'm just feeling this now, that we are going to be applying all of this in intimacy, in relationships, in our exploration of sex and love and connection and what comes next. I mean, we poured everything we've learned from relationship journeys into this company structure. Can you imagine us taking all we've learned and bringing it into actual like relationship partnership with men?
Yeah, really beautiful.
Yeah.
I will reflect. I was talking to someone the other day, and we were talking about when we could meet, and I said, and
by someone, you mean like a date?
Maybe. Like someone I met on an app, and we took it to Telegram, and then we had a video call, and I'm learning all the steps.
I don't know these steps.
I was like, well, you taught me all these steps. What are you talking about?
I don't know, I guess I don't know what I've never used Telegram.
Oh, Telegram, yeah.
So I did teach you to, yeah.
Because I was panicked the first time I thought about like, how do I go on an app and what do I do? And
I'm like, you have to connect with them by video first to make sure that there's chemistry.
You taught me, got us all the basics.
Okay, good.
Anyways, I was saying, I'm creating this podcast and we're recording. And he said, if you were at like this frequency for this entire conversation, when you started talking about the podcast, he's like, you went to a 10. And I was like, that's such a beautiful reflection.
Yes. Of the expansiveness.
Yeah.
Right. So,
and also I was like, oh, and there's a person in the world potentially for intimacy who reads that field.
Say more about that.
Well, many of the men I've been with, like, wouldn't have even had the language or been dialed in enough to even reflect that.
Absolutely. And I was also thinking, I would love for you to come to me and tell me, oh, I just had a date with so-and-so, and you feel that expansiveness, which I've seen you have sometimes, and other times you're crying. We've had it sometimes, and other times you're managing something that's not that. Whereas I feel like every time I'm not with you, so in the year of this journey, I had a 2-month relationship I tried, and he would say every single time he saw me, he's like, you must have been with Anya. You're lit up like, you're like a supernova right now. And and then do you ever wonder like how it will be that men come into this deep flow that we have? I mean, we have a lot of intimacy space taken up with each other, this company, and my dog and your 2 kids.
Right.
That's a lot. But but a lot of people do.
Yeah. And I think we both believe that intimacy is going to fuel the work we do.
I do believe that sacred sexuality and a really good resonant union is the sacred fire of the whole, ecosystem of my life. Yeah, I do believe that. I don't know why at 51 I still believe it I've had lots of glimpses of it and many experiences of it, but it's never been sustainable. Yeah.
It's your North Star.
My North Star is to create a partnership that is the expansion of this amazingness that already exists and is, I think, like appropriately, like I don't feel these things should be in competition with each other.
Right.
And I think patriarchy made us think it is.
And to your point, now that we've created and cut our teeth on like creating this new paradigm of relationship, we can take these
the muscles that we've exercised of staying at the table and really staying clear about what I want and
asking the hard questions, really creating a container. It's all going to translate into all the other areas of intimacy.
Agreed. I really agree. So if our main topics are intuition and sex and money, we've talked about intuition a lot. That's relationship and sex. What about money?
Yeah. Well, do we want to talk about money as it relates to Sofanya? Do we want to talk about like what's come up in the last year? Yeah,
I think so. I think what's interesting for me in money, I did my PhD on the focus of business and economics and what it could be if it was the model of generative nature rather than exploitive machine. And what I feel love and money and sex and power, all of these things are renewable resources as long as they're circulated. When they're hoarded or like entrapped, or they don't circulate. And so as long as there's an investment that keeps going out and then another source is bringing that back to you, it's a cycle and it's infinite. So I feel like I would love to be experiencing the wealth that Sofanya can create, which I know it is meant to, because I know we're meant to be a model where we say we did this in a different way with feminine skills, with intuition, and threaded in every single choice. And the only way it will ever be deemed successful is if it's successful by the metrics of which we deem business successful. It's made money. And at the same time, I did my whole PhD on making sure that if anything is building wealth, by having more of it, it's doing more good in the world. So every dollar that it makes means more good was done in the world. And it's the only way I can have wealth in my crosshairs is because that wealth is tied to more goodness, more health, more wellness, more wisdom. So for me, it's an expansion period. I wasn't allowed to live on that little lake and just read and write for the rest of my life because I'm meant to be working in a much bigger field. And I have to find a North Star for everything I do to motivate me and galvanize everything. For me, when I closed my eyes and said, show me why there are going to be glass bottles in landfill from my products because I exist.
Yeah.
That was a big one for me because everything I've done is service, teaching and whatever. And now things are going to be created. There's going to be a footprint. I've had no footprint. I think there's going to be a footprint. And if I'm going to the scale that you're telling me I'm supposed to go to, show me why there's going to be 1 million glass bottles in landfill. Maybe the people won't recycle them. I'll do my best to have recycled material and make them recyclable, but it's still like, let's say when I die, there's 1 million glass bottles in a landfill because of me. I was sick about it, as you know. You've gone on some journeys with me through this. So I closed my eyes and I saw, and what I saw was the earth being so big, like the cosmos, like divinity, and she said to me, like any woman, I want to create, I want to nurture, I want life to move through me, but I want it to be done consciously. And I saw how minuscule humanity is on her surface and how we're just like little flecks on her skin of like fleas. And she's just deciding, whether she blows us off and starts another season of humanity later on, or I just saw her greatness. And I saw that she wants me to take from her bosom, create things that with them carry beautiful energy and messaging and healing and medicine. And that, if they don't all end up there, but she's like, and I'm also part of it. And I can make sure that people do have the idea to recycle it and that they does stay in the generative cycle. So I got those answers for myself. But these are like the types of questions that have come up around making money. Right? To me, like money is a vehicle of energy, of impact, of creating an ethos of vibration. And those that are holding that on a big scale right now don't have the same values as me. And there's not very many on the landscape at that scale that do have the same values as me. And if not me, who? And if not now, when? So that's been my motivation.
And we've talked a lot about this being a legacy company.
Same more.
Right? About creating legacy for both of us. A lot of people, as we've been having conversations about investment, there's a lot of ways to to get investment in companies. And I think it's something that's always been a little different for us. Like I've said, we're not building this to sell it. We're really building this and we're creating this signature. It's like, it's very much
our essence
and our offering to the world. And it's something that we imagine passing down, right? We are building for legacy and we're inviting women in as investors who want that piece of legacy, whether they have, built and exited companies or their partners have. They want to weave their own essence into this as well. And I think legacy is important in a world that a lot of things are made to sell and pass on and make more money. And it's a longer vision.
And I remember the first investor saying that she invested because the frequency that we would carry and that she knew that her frequency needed to be part of it and that she wanted to weave with other women that were drawn to this frequency so that we could amplify.
Yeah.
And that's the creation of our investor circle called the Goddess Council.
And I remember I did a priestess training 2 or 3 years ago, and I did this meditation about divine feminine leadership. And I literally saw why divine feminine leadership is so different is because we walk a few steps ahead, but we bring others with us.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just like, I'm a leader and I'm better and I'm going to stand on a stage and tell you.
It's not a dominating, it's a collaborating.
It is bringing along. It's showing what's possible. It's reminding women of the wisdom that's already in their DNA from the women that have lived centuries ago that we all have.
Mm-hmm. And until there's a large scale model, it won't be taken seriously or looked to as a mentorship, a possibility, something that people can follow and take into their own leadership. And I feel like a lot of things like the 5-minute mile, once one person breaks that barrier, many do. And I hope that's the case.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We might be the first to go, but we won't be the last.
Yes.
That's the Everyday Magic podcast for this week. We've talked a lot about business and intuition. I think next week we dive into a little bit more sex and intimacy. And we've just come to it through such different journeys. I think there's a lot to share and explore.
And in the meantime, we'd love you to go to sophanyabeauty.com and join our email list. We, like many best friends, have more to share after we see each other. And we like to keep the conversation going and have you in our newsletter so we can also let you know other exciting things that are coming forward from us.
Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe so you don't miss an episode.